And now this statement from PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan in a memo to the PGA Tour membership. Today is a momentous day for your organization and the game of golf as a whole. The PGA Tour, your tour, is leading the formation of a new commercial entity to unify golf, one that sees the end of the disruption and distraction that has divided the men's professional game for the better part of 3 years. Through a framework agreement, the Public Investment Fund is contributing its golf-related commercial businesses and rights, including LIV Golf, along with a significant financial investment toward minority equity ownership of a new collectively held for-profit LLC. This new entity, named TBD, will also include the PGA Tour's commercial businesses and rights, as well as those of the DP World Tour. The PGA Tour will appoint a majority of the board and hold a majority voting interest in the combined entity. There are many details to work through as we develop a definitive agreement, which will ultimately require PGA Tour Policy Board approval. And I know you have many questions. There is much work to do to get us from a framework agreement to a definitive agreement. But one thing is obvious. Through this transformational agreement and with PIF's collaborative investment, the immeasurable strength of the PGA Tour's history, legacy, and pro-competitive model not only remains intact, but is supercharged for the future. Our game, our players, and our fans will no doubt benefit for years to come.
Let's welcome in Todd Lewis, who's always dialed into the heartbeat of the PGA Tour. Todd, you probably thought you had a peaceful travel day home from Columbus, Ohio, after covering golf's longest day yesterday on the heels of the Memorial. Damon and I, seeing the news this morning just after 10 a.m. Eastern time, were each shell-shocked. Your reaction to the combined merger that was just announced?
Well, this is going to go down as an historic and surprising day in the world of golf, but it is shocking. And I say that for a couple of reasons. In actuality, a year ago at the Memorial is when, if you remember, Dustin Johnson announced that he was going to go to LIV Golf, and then it trickled down from there. So the establishment of LIV Golf from a player perspective actually happened about a year ago. And now a year later, we have this merger between these entities, the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and LIV Golf. Very surprising. Just last week, I was having conversations with Andy Pazder and Tyler Dennis, who are high-ranking officials with the PGA Tour. And I asked them both if there was a pathway back to the PGA Tour for LIV Golf, if indeed LIV Golf, for whatever reason, either just dissolved or a player wanted to leave LIV Golf. And both of them said, we are right in the middle of a lawsuit with LIV Golf, and so we are not commenting. So there was a defensive stance. Then I got no indication. I could tell you no one in the hemisphere of golf really saw this coming. This seems to be, from the people that I have talked to, the sources that I have talked to, just a handful of people that put this together. I was also told by sources that Greg Norman was informed about this. So this is very, very surprising that this has happened, considering the stances that both of these parties have had over the last year.
Yeah, Todd, it's amazing how things have changed. A year ago, Jay Monahan said to the players, your tour is under threat. Now it is your tour is supercharged. What role do you think the players played in this scenario, Todd? And I mean by just seeing them together at Augusta National, seeing them together competitively at the PGA Championship, and there being no, back and forth ugliness, seeing the backslaps and the hugs and them side by side on the range and inside the ropes.
That's a great question, David. I will say this, that players, I'm talking big-time players on both sides, did not see this coming. They found out just minutes, maybe an hour before the announcement was made today officially. So they were not involved in this at all. I'm talking on both sides. Now, yes, when we saw what happened in the Masters this year, when we saw what happened at the PGA Championship this year, there really didn't seem to be any friction on that stage. But there has been. Let's not forget, Patrick Reed and Rory McIlroy had a dust up on the DP World Tour. There has been some back and forth between Phil Mickelson and players and others. I mean, I'm just pointing them out, not to singularly say that they were the only ones, but there has been some talk out there. There has been a rivalry. There's no doubt about it. But, I felt like the biggest rivalry was between the governors of these leagues. And And I am surprised that this has happened. But if you step back from the surprise and analyze this from a business perspective, what does LIV Golf have? Well, they seem to have an endless fountain of money. We've heard a lot of people say that, hey, the money's just going to run out for LIV Golf. I didn't think that was going to happen, and the people that I've talked to involved with LIV Golf around it didn't think money was the issue. Maybe frustration was the issue, because really they have not been able to commercialize as much in the United States as I'm sure they've wanted to. So they had plenty of money. PGA Tour found that attractive. What does the PGA Tour have that LIV wants? They have great sponsors. They have commercialism. They have a foundation from a business perspective here in the United States. So now LIV Golf has this alliance with the PGA Tour, and they hope, it seems like they think they will have an opportunity to commercialize more here in the United States. And then the PGA Tour is going to get a lot of money from PIF as well. So that seems like the marriage as to why this is happening, but still, it's surreal. It's surreal for me to see those guys, Jay Monahan and Yasser, sitting beside each other, complimenting each other as being visionaries, like they've been best friends for a long, long time. I mean, I can tell you this lawsuit, from the people that I've talked to that they've had, I feel like both sides did not want this lawsuit to go to discovery at all. And I think that was a bit of motivation. So, it's shocking that this has happened.
Todd, you were saying, I mean, it's such a small group of people that facilitated and constructed and then went public with this new for-profit entity and this merger with the DP World Tour, LIV Golf, and the PGA Tour. If you're a PGA Tour member who had carried that mantle, and say you're a Tiger Woods, a Rory McIlroy, a Jordan Spieth, all these guys had been wearing it for you. You're the good soldier. How do you feel today?
You're upset. You're very upset, and for a couple of reasons. You decided to be loyal to the PGA Tour because you believed in what the PGA Tour stood for, and you felt like that was the highest level of competition to measure yourself as to be a great player. That's where your legacy is made on the PGA Tour, and that was part of the argument for many of these incredible players to stay with the PGA Tour. The other thing is that they turned down a lot of guaranteed money, a lot. And so right now, the initial reaction from the players that I've talked to, and it's just been a small sample size because the news is pretty recent, the players that stayed with the PGA Tour, especially those really high-ranking players, are upset because they're watching Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau win the lottery. And now it looks like they're going to be able to come back and play on the PGA Tour. And those that decided not to go to LIV Golf because they had opportunities, they really did, to stay loyal to the PGA Tour, their pockets are not quite as full as those others that I mentioned.
Todd, you've done a number of sit-downs throughout the years with players, with the stakeholders, with the leaders of this game. If you had to sit down today with the commissioner of the PGA Tour, Jay Monahan, what would be the first question you'd ask him?
What shifted? What shifted for you to make this alliance that decided that you wanted to have an agreement with a group that you were adamantly against and you felt like wasn't for the good of the game of golf? What shifted today? So that's the very first question I would ask. And I can tell you, the players' meeting that they're going to have in Canada today may be the most important meeting in the PGA Tour's history in regards to explaining to their members, Jay Monahan and the other officials that will be there, as to why this is good and why. And the players are going to ask, why should we feel loyal to you now after being loyal to you before? And then now these other players are going to get richer and they're going to get to come and play on this tour. It seems like that. That's what it seems like. Now, again, they're still working out the intricacies of how this is all going to work. But this is going to be a very, very important meeting this afternoon.
Yeah, that's later at 4 Eastern at the RBC Canadian Open. Todd, you travel week to week with the PGA Tour. The public perception of LIV Golf to this now be a joint merger. What do you think the reaction is going to be from the average golf fan?
Well, look, this is shocking. There's no doubt about it. This is shocking and historic, as I mentioned earlier. But if we can somehow take some emotion out of this and look at the landscape a year and a half from now, from a fan's perspective, this could be very good for the game. Could be. I don't know. Again, we're still waiting on the further details as to how this alliance is going to work. But obviously, this is now in a global perspective with all the entities involved. It seems like you're going to have all the stars involved more often. You're going to get the best from what is now LIV Golf and the best from the PGA Tour playing more together. And you know what? Tension isn't a bad thing in sports. Rivalry isn't a bad thing in sports, and so if you have some of that friction on the golf course, it's going to bring more eyeballs to it. So, this could, I talked to several people this morning, and again, this has been recent, that are involved with the game, that they said that if you look past all the shock and awe of this, that they think that this is actually going to benefit the game of golf from a fan perspective.